Hi, and welcome to the Virgin River Cafe Rewatch podcast. Good morning, Gigi.
Good morning, Tracy.
How
How
are
are
you?
you today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. We're in the holidays, in the nick of the holiday season.
Mm. Yeah,
Yes.
depending on when people are listening,
Mm,
it could
yeah.
be it could be July, But for us, it's now December, so we are in the
We're
thick
in
of the
heat.
holiday season.
Yes,
When
we are.
when we lose the end of November, December, and all of a sudden, before we know it, it's January, and we have no idea what happened.
Yeah, that's true.
Because that's how things work around here.
Yep, it does.
So, what is your flavor of the day? What is your
My
caffeinated
flavor
beverage?
of the day is I'm going strong. I'm going with a Vietnamese coffee.
Ooh,
So
yum.
we're going there today. We need a little power boost.
Yeah, I hear that. Yeah, as we were chatting before we started this morning, and I was telling Gigi, I have a feeling today's going to be mm, today's going to be a challenge. I have a feeling that I have a lot on my plate today, and not really looking forward to it. And yeah, so we're going to need some strong coffee to get through it. I may even need another one later. I have a feeling I'm going to need a reboot later today.
Well, I'm sure you have it all lined up, my
We
friend.
will have to see. Yeah. Today I went with something I just made at home. My little brew that I do at home with my special foam and my special sauce and the pumpkin spice creamer my husband got me, and I even got a can of cold foam they sell in the grocery store. So
Yeah.
mine is like it's bougie. Okay, I got the bougie home coffee today because I need it.
What?
I need it. So
N-
we're gonna.
Nothing wrong with bougie, my friend.
Yeah. All right. So today we have now crossed over the threshold of halfway through season 3. This is a really fun episode. This is a really fun episode. So let's get started.
We're in season 3, episode 6, Jack and Jill. Hmm.
This is a fun one. This is the Lumberjack Games. This is a really fun one. It says Jack and Mel argue about their relationship and their future while competing in the Lumberjack Games. Brie opens up about her painful breakup.
Mm-mm-mm.
Okay, so here we go. Now we continue because it's not the end of the season. So we are literally moments from when we've ended the last episode. And the last one ended with Brie and Mel on their way out. And Brie mentioned how Mel had a certain braid in her hair, and that she hadn't seen that since Mandy, who happened to be Jack's ex wife, excuse me, which was a shocker to Mel because
Exactly.
you'd think someone would mention they'd been married before, just a little tidbit of information. But no, nope, hadn't mentioned that one. So I'm sure that will be a conversation they have
Oh,
later. And because Brie is not feeling so well, you could tell she just wasn't herself. She was almost
mm.
like so focused on herself, she didn't even like think about what she was saying to Mel. And she was like, yeah, yeah, yeah. Could you just like maybe not say anything to him about that? Like normally that would be a bigger conversation, but I think she was very preoccupied, and so it kind of came out weird.
Yeah,
And
well, there's a lot
there's a lot
that's
going on
going,
there. Yeah.
yeah, there's a lot going on with Brie.
And she went to get up and passed out. And so here we are, the beginning of the episode, because Mel, of course, always carries her
From
blood pressure
Danny.
cuff with her in her bag because, she's
Mm-hmm.
nurse on the spot. And she's checking Brie over to make sure that she's okay. And Brie is just not feeling good. She's like, well, you have low blood pressure. And Brie runs into the bathroom and is like basically losing her lunch. And
Pretty much.
Mel must have called Jack when she grabbed the phone after Brie passed out, and he comes upstairs. Now, remember when she fell, her purse kind of went everywhere, and he goes to like check out what was on the floor, and there's a bottle of medicine. And he's looking at it like, "What is this?" And he asks Mel, and she's like, "Oh, that's Xanax. That's for anxiety." And he's like, "That's why? Why would she be taking that?" They're just looking at each other like, hmm. So
Mm.
Bree is not feeling good. She's like, I'm so sorry. I just don't feel good. They're like, we're just gonna let you rest. Just go to, she's like, I just want to sleep, and she goes to bed. So they leave, and he's like, if you need anything, you just let me know. I'll be downstairs. And then Jax looks at Mel. Is like, why would she be taking Xanax? And Mel's like, well, it's
Mhm.
usually prescribed for anxiety. And he was like, yeah, but that's Brie. Brie doesn't even take a Tylenol. Like, she doesn't take anything. And Mel's like, she doesn't know her that well. So, she only knows her since Jack was shot. And she's like, well, I don't know. Maybe she's still freaked out about you being shot. I mean, that would kind of make sense. I mean, that's a pretty big event. Your brother nearly dies, and it wasn't that long ago. Maybe a month and a
Mhm.
month and a half, possibly.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, they're just trying to figure it out because not a lot's making sense.
Yeah. And I think we as the audience know that something's going on with
They do.
work
Yes,
because,
yes.
because we sense that every
There's
time she has
phone
full,
calls and
right, there's some anxiety every time that happens.
right, exactly. And
So,
remember, she got her prescription refilled. And remember when she was with Brady while he was in the bathroom, she snuck a pill really quick. So
yeah.
you know that this is an ongoing, it's not just like once in a while. It's like she seems to be very, very anxious
Yeah.
about something, and it's just really eating at her.
Yeah. Definitely is.
So Mel is just like, I don't know. And Mel's concerned because when she first got to Bree's room and she looked around, she did see an empty wine glass. And, Mel, who is very observant, but also a nurse, she's like, there's a possibility that because I saw an empty wine glass, she may have mixed it with alcohol, which could, alcohol is a depressive. Xanax is a depressive. You put two depressives together, that's how some people, you can you can drink too much and take too much, and together it can depress your whole system, and it can actually cause your heart to slow down to the point that it stops. But it can also
Mm.
cause you to pass out. It causes you to get sleepy. I mean, there's a level, different
Mm-hmm.
variations of what could happen, but the two together, that's why they tell you do not drink when you're on that medicine. So we're going to have to find out if Brie is able to talk about it. But, they're both very concerned. And Jack is feeling responsible, of course, because
Yeah.
that's his sister and he's the one that was shot. And, he probably feels like he hasn't checked in with her enough or been there for her enough. I mean, she kind of did read him the riot act that he hadn't been around for like a really long time. He had his own problems. A little PTSD will do that to you.
Yes, it would.
So her recommendation is just let her sleep. We'll check on her in the morning because she checked her. She's okay. Nothing's wrong right now. And then maybe in the morning, maybe Jack can try to talk to her and hopefully get to the bottom of what's going on.
Well, that's the thing about siblings. You care for them sometimes way too much,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
this is something. And you're right. This is his baby sister,
Right.
basically.
And
So,
they're the closest, which is weird because they really haven't spent a lot of time together. But him and Brie are the closest of all the siblings because there's like the other sisters,
mm,
and I guess they have their own family. She's single, he was single, but the others are like married with kids.
right.
So, and he's the oldest and she's the youngest, so that's maybe why
Yeah.
they're close. But Mel just tries to reassure him that she'll be okay. She checked her. She's going to be okay. Just let her sleep, talk to her tomorrow, and, we'll figure out what's going on. So she's just
Yep.
trying to be supportive. He's worried, of course.
Well, it's the nature of being a big brother, I guess.
Yeah, he's going to worry no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the next morning, and we are at Doc's house. There's a knock at the door, and he's trying to rush down the steps. So he must now be staying with Hope. Obviously, now they're back together.
Yep.
And he
The ladies have arrived.
oh my gosh, he opens the door to Joellen, who is frantic, and Lizzie is on her, on her heels, and they've got these huge containers full of papers and things. And Joellen is explaining to Doc that this other woman who was supposed to run the Lumberjack Games she's like, she's president. And he's like, why are you telling me all of this? And she goes, well, she can't run the games in her condition. She's ill. And so now we have to do it. And he was like, oh, no, 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 no. I already told Hope that this is not my thing. I will support, but I will not do. And Joellen's like, but if we don't help out, that's an absolute disaster. I mean, this is an annual event. They have to do what they have to do. And now she's putting it on him that it's your job that the event runs smoothly. And he's like, oh, like you already made me do, like Hope already made him do the newsletter.
The fly. Yeah, the flyers.
Right?
Yeah.
The flyer. And it's like, you need to get home, my dear, because I am not the mayor, and I don't want to be the mayor. I didn't sign up to be the mayor, and I don't want to do the mayor's job. So Joellen,
didn't sign up for this part.
No, he didn't sign up for any of it. And Joellen is obviously willing to help. All the ladies are always willing to jump in and help, but I don't know that it's clear what it is he needs to do because he just is clueless. So Joellen's like, you know, she's going to work the entrance, but she can't do the other stuff because she has to work the entrance. And he's like, how am I going to oversee like all the games myself? Like I'm one person. And he's a little frantic. And she's like, well, I've brought you an assistant, which she motions to Lizzie. And Lizzie's just like, I don't even know what these people are talking about. She's like, what? And Doc is like, yeah, I don't know what she's talking about either. And
well, everybody's clueless except for
Joellen seems to know what's going on, but unfortunately we are not in Joellen's head and neither are they, and so that makes it a little complicated. Now, it does help that Muriel had agreed to MC all the competitions. So that's one job that he doesn't have to worry about filling. And I guess Jack and Preacher were going to take care of the food, which is probably some of these jobs were already assigned, I'm sure. And then Connie, she's in charge of the bakery tent, which is fine. And Lizzie is like, what exactly is this? Like, I don't even know what this is. And Doc is trying to explain it's like Olympics for lumberjacks. And she's like, why is that a thing? Like, she's from LA. They don't clearly, there are no lumberjacks in LA that we know of. And Doc is like, well, it's like the reason they do it is it's an annual tribute at the top of Shelter Mountain. Now, Shelter Mountain is in the Virgin River books. It's one of the books. So there's a whole story with people on Shelter Mountain. Yeah. It's one of the 22 books, and that's one of them. And I guess this whole event honors all the men and women who founded Virgin River. And he's like, and it's a hoot. And Joellen said that that Lizzie needed to dress like a lumberjack. And Doc's like, well, everyone does, and because it's festive and it's really cold up there. And so Joellen's got this big container full of binders and all kinds of stuff. And she's like, everything you need is right here. The schedule, the volunteer worker shifts, participants, the MCQ safety protocol, like this binder that's like 4 inches thick.
Please, the thinking you can kill a man with that binder.
I think it actually is to their benefit that Hope probably does this every year, and at least it's all laid out. Can you imagine if they just showed up and said we have to do this and they had no idea? At least there's a plan. At least there's a plan. So Joellen gets a phone call, and it's Nick, and she's like, gotta run. And she's like, but wait, where are you going? She's like, I'll be a minute. Just hold on. So Doc is like, I know how I got here, but how did you Lizzie get roped into this? Now, remember that she was staying with Ricky, and they're like, you need to work it out with Connie, and, this can't be a permanent situation. You need to, figure it out. And I think she felt uncomfortable, so she went to go stay at the B&B, and Joellen was like, if you help me, I won't charge you. So it was sort of like, okay, but she didn't know what she was getting into. She clearly did not know.
Well, it's best she stays there because she can't stay at Ricky's and because that's not a good situation.
Oh, yeah, yeah. And she's like, Doc says that Hope's going to owe him a lot when she gets back because of all the stuff that he has had to take care of in her absence. And I'm sure he will be more than happy to collect because. So now we are at the top of Shelter Mountain. Again, beautiful scenery. And this is an actual thing. There is, you can, when you go visit Vancouver, and there is a place where they have the Lumberjack Games every year. It is an actual location. There are really games there. I don't know when they happen. I'd have to research and find out. But this is actually a thing. And so if you go up that way, you can see where they do the Lumberjack Games annually, so, which is kind of
all right.
Cool. So there's everything from, axe throwing and log rolling and tree climbing. It's exactly what you would think. If you have an idea of what lumberjacks do, probably they turned all of their activities into games. So, of course, Jack is there not only to work the food tent, but to help set up. So he is in process of setting up the axe throwing. So he's erecting this this thing that they throw the axes at, and he has to put up a target. And Mel shows up because everybody has a job, and she's like, "What are you doing?" And he's like, "Oh, I'm just setting up the axe throwing targets." And she's like, "I brought you a coffee." And she's, it's cold, so she's got a hat on, and she's carrying one of those medical bags, kind of like these. Obviously, these games have to have a medical tent in case someone gets injured. I mean, with axes and knives and saws and things and tree climbing, you got to have medical on standby. So I guess she's in charge of medical for the day. So she's got her bag there, and she's ready just in case. And she brings him a coffee because, he had to get there early. And as he's setting up, he's like, "Thanks." And then he stops, and he just can't take his eyes off of her. He's just glued. And she's like, "What? What are you looking at?" And she's laughing at him. And he goes, "Do you have any idea how gorgeous you are?" As he's setting up the length for where you have to stand to throw the axe. And she's like, "Did you hit your head already?" And he's like, "Nope." She's like, "Because I got my trauma kit right here," because that's what she's carrying around. And he's like, "Oh, no, I'm right as rain. Thank you." And this lumberjack game thing it looks huge because behind Jack, there's this giant tree ring with a map of where all the different games are. And there must be 15 locations and all kinds of activities. And, this is a big deal. This is a really big deal. So he's like, "No, I'm right as rain." And he's like, "So how much first aid do you plan on giving?" And she's like, "Well, considering I've never attended any event with chainsaws, guns, and axe throwing, I'm not really sure." And he's like, "Okay." So she's like, "So I already said yes to this, but what exactly is a tree race?" Because he was going to make her participate in some way.
Oh, of course he was.
Because we're not just going to be bystanders. Because I'm sure he does stuff every year. He participates. So, and he clarifies by saying it's actually a treetop race. And she's like, "Uh-huh." She goes, "Yeah, I still don't know what that means." Because remember, she's from LA. This is foreign.
Yep.
And he takes the coffee and he's like, "Well, you kind of have to see it to understand it." Now, I'm sorry. That would not be enough of an explanation for me. I'd be like, "No, I think when I say I need to know what it is, just telling me."
You need detail. You need details.
Yeah, I need a little bit more than that. So if you could please, do I need to Google it or something? What? So I think he's just being coy and funny. And she's like, "And the Jack and Jill?" And he's like, "Oh, well, we tandem saw through a log." And she cracks up. "Are you kidding?" And he's like, "No." She's like, "Okay." He's like, "I knew you would love it." And she's like, "Okay." She goes, "Well, full disclosure, I don't like heights and I've never touched a saw." And he's like, no, you're going to do great. Don't even worry about it. I mean, she's clearly skeptical, but
I'm skeptical too because I don't do heights either.
she's like, yeah, well, don't say I didn't warn you. And he's like,
Hmm.
don't you worry. And he leans over and gives her a kiss. And then she's like, so have you seen Brie this morning? He's like, no. But she texted and said that she would be coming up to the Lumberjack Games later. So, and he's still feeling guilty. He's like, I knew something was up with her, and I feel like I should have pushed harder. Maybe she would have talked to me. And Mel, she's that empathetic person. She's like, sometimes people just aren't ready to talk about their feelings. So, you got to just give them the space to do what they need to do. I mean, he
Yeah.
doesn't like that answer, but that's how it is. So, he just wishes
Well,
he could do more.
yeah.
And then Joellen is off to the side yelling for Jack because remember, not everybody is where they're supposed to be, and Hope's not there to run it, and so everyone's a little frantic. He's got to go help Joellen, and they give each other a little kiss, and they're like, okay, we'll talk later. Love you, love you. Now they do the I love yous all the time. Like, it took forever to, like, get the words out, and now they just freely throw them left and right, and it's cute.
It's very nice.
It's very nice. And the music for this is very lumberjacky. If you have to like pick I don't know, it gives you lumberjack vibes when you hear it.
It's cool.
And it's like people like scaling tree trunks. They look like telephone poles, and
Yep.
two people on one log rolling it to see who falls off first. Um, with stands to like watch each of the events.
It's a big deal up there.
It's really huge. It's really
Yeah.
huge. And these guys are like professionals, so they really know what they're doing.
Yes, they are. And you can tell they got real lumberjacks to do these
Oh, yeah,
things.
they do. Absolutely. This is authentic.
Yeah,
This is definitely
it,
authentic. Like I said,
yeah.
it's a real place that they actually used for this. There's a guy who he sculpted a bear out of a tree trunk, with a chainsaw, and just different activities for people to watch and participate in, and who can chop through a wood faster. And Connie's got her little bakery truck all set out, and
She's selling her goodies.
yep, selling her goodies. Now, Preacher brings Christopher. This is the first time he's ever been there, and he is just like, this is so cool. And
Yeah.
they're watching the
Saw cut.
yeah.
Saw cutting.
Bert and his sister are going to do a competition where they see who can saw through something the fastest.
Yeah, log the fastest.
And Christopher is like, that is the coolest thing ever. And he tries to go inside the pen where they are. And Preacher's like, oh, no. You got to stay outside. And he was like, I want to do that. And Preacher's like, oh, no, no. And Bert is like, oh, you should have seen me when I was a kid. Wow, I was more excited than a dog with two tails. He's so Southern. It's funny. Or backwoods or whatever you want to call it. And he's trying to tell Christopher that, soon enough he'll be grown and he'll be able to use a saw, because the best present he ever got when he was 7 was a chainsaw. And
oh my Lord.
Christopher's like, he had one when he was 7 and I'm almost 10. And he goes, yeah, well, people didn't know a lot about safety back then. So Preacher wants to take Christopher down where the horseback riding is, and Christopher would rather sit and watch Bert and his sister cut more wood. And Preacher's like, all right, but you got to stay here. Don't move. Don't talk to strangers. Bert is right there. So, And so he has to go check Jack and see what's going on with the setup. So now we've got Doc, and he is counting the I think it's for the zip line. I think it's for the zip line.
Yeah,
the harnesses.
zip line.
There it is.
Yeah.
Doc's in the process of counting the harnesses, and Lizzie comes over because they sent her over to help him. And he's like, they're supposed to be 14, and I think something's wrong, and one is missing, and maybe someone took it. And she's like, well, did you count him? He's like, yeah, I know how to count. I'm not an idiot. And so she goes over and she counts it, and she's like, I count 14. And he's like, well, that's not right. And then he puts his glasses on, and he starts counting, and he's like, huh, okay. well, someone must have returned one when I wasn't looking. Because you know his eyesight, something's going on with that.
Exactly.
And he's trying to cover it up, and he's doing a pretty good job so far, but yeah, he's a little concerned. And then so Lizzie's like, is there anything else I could do? He goes, well, Jeb might need some help over at the axe throwing. And she's like, well, where exactly is that? Because this place is huge. And he's like, you just keep walking that way until you see somebody throwing an axe. It's like, that's such great advice. Thank you for those wonderful directions, Doc. Like, you know she's thinking that. Like, really? That's great.
Um,
She's like, oh my God, I can't believe this is my life. So Lily and her daughter show up with the baby, and they're kind of meandering through. And as they see Joellen looks upset. Lily's like, why does Joellen look upset? And Joellen's talking to Muriel and Connie and Liddy. She's talking to all of them, and
yeah, they all seem slightly frantic.
right. And Tara's like, well, before we go over there, I have to tell you something. And Tara tells Lily, she's like, what? And she's like, when you were in the parking lot talking to Mrs. Gardner, I ran into Connie. Now, you know, if you tell Connie something, she can't hold it. Unless Preacher tells her to, then she can. But this, no.
Yeah.
And Lily's like, what? And she's like, I told her that you're sick. And she starts to cry. And she's like, I'm so sorry. She's like, she was asking me all these questions, and I didn't want to lie, and I didn't know. And Lily's like, no, it's fine. She goes, there's nothing to be upset about. I mean, she feels bad that she has had to make her carry this by herself. And Tara's like, this cancer is all I think about, and how can I talk about anything else? And, you know, Lily she just feels bad. She's like, I didn't want anyone to know because I didn't want to burden anyone, and now I realize that I just did exactly what I didn't want to do, was put all the burden on you, and that's not right. And she shouldn't have done that.
Well, as you like to say, you cannot ring a bell, my friend.
Yep. And, you know, Lily's like, you're going through this just as much as I am, and we need each other, we need our friends. And so Lily's like, it's okay, let's go over there, let's talk to them. And Tara's like, are you sure? She goes, I'm your mother, let's go, I insist. And so they go over to talk to the ladies. And as soon as they get there, everyone hugs Lily. And they're like, we're so sorry. We're so sorry. And it's like, just like a big hug fest. Everyone's crying. Everyone's hugging.
Yes.
So then Jack is setting up the tent because he's going to grill burgers and hot dogs and things. And he gets a phone call from Charmaine. And he's like, I'm kind of busy. Can I call you back? And she's like, no, I need your help. And he's like, why? What's wrong? She's like, I have to rehome Tucker. Tucker is the dog that he found at the park randomly. And gave the dog to Charmaine. And he's like, why? And he goes, well, Todd is allergic. And we thought we could make it work, but his allergies, and they keep him up at night. And if he can't sleep, he can't work. And it's just a problem. And he goes, well, you know, if he has allergies, tell him to go see Mel or Doc. Like, there's ways to fix that. I mean, this could be a very simple fix. But she goes, well, he doesn't have time, and he doesn't want to take shots, and over-the-counter stuff makes him tired. Yeah, there's non-drowsy. Like, come on, Todd. Put your big boy pants on. Let's go. Seriously. And he goes, well, that would fix his insomnia. Like, Jack's just got an answer for everything. I love it. And she's like, Jack, don't make this difficult. Because you know how much she loves this dog. And she's like, I've asked everyone I know, and nobody can take Tucker. So it's going to be Jack's fault. So she's like, and if I can't find a home for him in the next few days, you know, and you hear that, and he's like, fine, okay, I'll take him. I'll figure it out. And she's like, you will? Oh, thank you, Jack. So she's relieved that now, you know. She goes, well, we'll be over. We'll be over as soon as Todd's out of his meeting. And he's like, great. One more thing I have to, like, does the man not have enough to deal with? Now he's got to find a home for a dog?
Apparently so.
Good Lord. So Jack sees Mike, and he's like, oh, look who shows up after all the work is finished. He's like, well, yeah, man. And he looks like a man with a plan. Like he's determined. He is walking with purpose. And he's like, well, I got work to do too. And Jack is like, well, fishing's not work, buddy. And Mike is like, I'm talking about your case. And Jack's like, oh, okay. Then we're going to get serious. And I don't know. Mike does not look happy. He looks very concerned. And he's like, Brady doesn't have an alibi for the night of your shooting. And Jack's like, what? And B, who, remember, Charmaine and Mel went to that other bar?
Yeah.
They went to talk to her to get some information. And she had sort of given him an alibi because that's the bar, I guess, that they hang out with. When they see people go to a different bar, it must be her bar.
Yeah.
And she sort of gave him an alibi, but then when they went to re-interview people, yeah, her story kind of had some holes in it. It didn't add up, and now there's 2 hours that Brady is unaccounted for. And Jack is like,
I swear, that boy has more trouble coming his way than he needs to. Ugh.
I mean, I think his middle name is Trouble. It's like he was born under a bad sign or something. And Jack's like, do you think she lied? And Mike's like, no, I think she just honestly made a mistake. Like, once you really think about, like, your day and what happened and all of that, and you really, like, put some thought into it, the timeline came out differently than she originally had thought. And now there's 2 hours that Brady is unaccounted for, and that does not look good for Brady.
No, it does not.
And Mike has to break the news to Jack that now Brady is their primary suspect.
Oh, jeez.
And Jack's like, what? No. Yeah. No. Like, I mean, they have differences, sure, but for Brady to shoot him? I mean, he's like, but we were brothers. And Mike's like, yeah, I know, but you know how much, as well as I know, you know, Iraq changed everybody.
Well,
and Jack's just like, I can't believe that. Like, I don't want to believe it. He's like, I don't know. I don't see it. And Mike's like, you know what? We can't rule anybody out. He's just going to, he's going to work the case because you can think whatever you want, but it's all about the evidence. So right now he has no alibi for 2 hours. If they can figure out where he was and it makes sense, then he's fine. But if not, we're going to have to wait and see. Kind of a mess. Kind of bad for Brady. So as Mike always says, you just go where the case leads you. It's all about the evidence. So, of course, Jack's now very concerned. So now we are at the medical tent. And Mel is taking care of someone who suggests to her patient that the next time that he works with chainsaws, that he wears pants instead of shorts, because apparently he nicked his leg. Silly man. And Brie walks up. Now, she is not dressed for the Lumberjack Games. She's got a cute little scarf around her neck and a skirt and a nice, like, cardigan sweater or something.
She's dressed like a city girl, too.
She is dressed like she's going out to lunch, not wearing her flannels for the Lumberjack Games. And so she's just waiting on the side till Mel's finished. And Mel's like, hey, you came. And she's like, yeah, but I didn't get the dress code memo. Sorry. And Mel's like, well, they are selling fake beards over at the tent over there. So if you want to partake. But Mel's like, I'm really glad you came. And she's like, yeah, I promised Jack I'd help out. But, and she goes, yeah. She goes, well, I promised Jack that I would saw through a tree trunk with him. And Brie is like, you must really love my brother.
My brother.
Right? And she's like, I do. What are you going to do? So Brie's like, I'm starving. She's like, what's good around here? And Mel's like, well, she goes, oh, there's a bakery tent. Let's go raid it. And Brie's like, yes, let's go. So they're off to go find some snacks. Now it's cold up there. Yeah, a woman after her own heart. So Brie is sort of in apologetic mode, let's say. She's like, I'm really sorry about last night. And Mel's like, you know what? I'm really glad that I was there. Brie's like, I think I maybe ate something that didn't agree with me. Or like she's trying to play it off. And okay, again, Mel, who does not hold back, she speaks the truth and she's very direct. Even Brie said to Jack when they were trying to figure out if Jack really thought that Mel wanted him to move in. And Brie
Yeah.
said, she's very direct. Like, here's an example of her being direct. And this is a touchy subject. She's like, Brie, I saw the Xanax. And Brie stops. And she's like, you went through my purse? And she goes, no, I didn't. When you fell, it got knocked over and it fell out and Jack picked them up. And she goes, oh, wonderful. Now Jack knows. That's just great. That's awesome. And Mel, as a medical professional, understanding dosages and medication, she's like, how much are you taking? And Brie's like, well, I mean, one isn't enough anymore.
Mm.
And Mel's like, okay, well, did you happen to mix it with wine? Because I saw an empty glass. Because she's not going to step away from this. She's going to find out. And she goes, well, sometimes I need them to work faster. And
No,
she's like,
that's
it was
not what Mel wants to hear.
no, she's like, it was a mistake. I definitely learned my lesson. It's never going to happen again. She goes, well, both Xanax and alcohol are depress the central nervous system functions like breathing. And this is like a stern warning. Like, you cannot mix these things. She's like, and that could be fatal. And
Yep.
Bria's like,
Not good.
well, I was just having such a bad day. And Mel's like, look, I get it. After Jack was shot, I had bad days too. And Brie's like, yeah, I started taking it before the shooting. And Mel's like,
Well,
oh.
at least she's honest.
And she's like, do you want to tell me what's going on? Like, there are no other women their age. They are the only two.
Exactly.
Like, there's all the older women. I think Lily might be Muriel might be like mid to late 50s. I think they're the youngest. I mean, and then you go down to like Lizzie. There's nobody in between. So
now you can see why they're best friends in real life now.
Right. I mean, they just happen to be close in age. They obviously both love Jack, so they have that in common, So Mel is trying to be a friend, and she's like, "Do you want to tell me what's going on?" And Brie is like, I was dating a guy in Sacramento, and he was an attorney." And she kind of hesitates. She goes, "And it ended badly. Really badly. And so I quit my job." And Mel's like, "Oh, did you work with him?" And she's like, No. I just couldn't stand the idea of seeing him in court." And then she kind of like tries to laugh it off sort of awkwardly. And Mel's like, "I'm really sorry." And Mel's like, "You should really talk to Jack because he's really, really worried about you." She's like, "Yeah, I know, but we're just not as close as we used to be." And Mel's like, "Well, yeah, I get it, but you're both here. You're in Virgin River together. Maybe that can change. Maybe you guys can get closer again like you used to." And so just out of like trying to change the subject, now that she kind of got her to talk, maybe she feels a little better that she got a little bit off of her chest. And Mel's like, "You know what? They have really good cinnamon swirls." And Bree's like, "I'm going to need 2 of them." And so they arm in arm, let's go. So now we're over by the axe throwing. And I guess Lizzie is helping out in that area. And Ricky shows up. And Jeb is there. And Lizzie goes to pick up the axes because she's just handing them to the people as their turns are happening. And Ricky asks Lizzie, "So it probably isn't the best time to ask this, but are you still pissed at me? The woman is holding 2 axes." I love that. It's like, okay, Ricky, read the room, dude. Read the room. Okay, Jeb is...
This is why being a teenager is so odd. Because there's no understanding of one's environment.
Okay.
We're just gonna wing it.
Keep in mind, your frontal cortex, which is reasoning, does not fully develop until you're 25. He's got years before that's going to happen. So I expect nothing less than idiotic comments and behavior. That's just, young people are just destined to like be ridiculous.
Stupid shit.
Do stupid stuff, say stupid stuff, act like stupid people. That's just who they are. They can't help it. once that part of the brain fully develops at, like I said, around 25.
God help parents.
I
I
know.
say.
So when your kid does something dumb, now you know why. If you didn't know that before, now you know. When you know, you know. So
Uh,
Jeb is like listening to this conversation as he's about 2 feet behind Ricky, probably looking at Lizzie's face going, you know what, I'm going to take these for you, and you guys can just, finish that little conversation. And the look on his face is hilarious.
mm-hmm.
And he just smiles and, smiles
Yeah,
awkwardly at both of them and takes the axes from Lizzie.
because he's thinking if she's pissed, she's going to hit him with this.
A woman scorned is one thing. A woman scorned with 2 axes in her hand, that's a whole nother situation.
Uh-huh.
So Lizzie's like, whatever, Ricky. If you don't want to live together, I'll figure something out. She's like, I have options. And he's like, well, I just don't think we're ready. And she's like, well, why not? He's like, well, because we haven't even been going out that long. I mean,
Exactly.
we're still getting to know each other. She goes, well,
Are
enough
you?
to have sex. And he's like, having sex doesn't mean we'll spend the rest of our lives together. She looks at him. She goes, neither does living together. He goes, well, yeah, it's pretty close. And then he glances over and he sees the military booth set up.
Yep.
And he's like trying not to look over there, but looking over there. Because remember, he's already had a moment where he's gone and talked to them.
Yeah. But let me just for pause.
Mm-hmm.
Did he not? Didn't he already tell people? I mean, I know
No.
Jack knows, so he didn't tell Lizzie yet.
No, Lizzie doesn't know. Lizzie does not. Lizzie thinks he's going to community college, just like her. They're going to go together.
Okay,
Because remember, he was like, oh, I'm going to, when he graduated and he was trying to like avoid her and I'm busy. What are you doing? I'm researching. He's like, what? Classes? He's like, but you already graduated. He goes, yeah, for school, for next year. So he's led her to believe that he's going to go to the local community college, and that's what she's going to do.
All right, because I know Jack and Preacher knows that he wants to go into the military. I didn't realize he didn't tell her.
No, he didn't tell her. And he has his reasons, which will come out. But and it's, you get it, but you're like, really? Like, you should have said something. But anyway.
Yeah. Okay.
So he's like, can we talk about this later? And she's like, I don't think there's anything else to talk about. And then Jeb's like, Lizzie, I need your help. And so to get out of there, Ricky's like, Jeb needs your help and I got to go. So there's games for kids that are very similar. Instead of like axes, they have beanbag axes. And, just so that the kids can, be a part of it. And then they're selling beards and
lovely foods that have maple syrup in it.
Yep. Well, it's Lumberjack, so they're going to have flapjacks. Now, my understanding is that when they have these kinds of scenes, that the entire backdrop, all the extras and everything are all local people. Everybody you see are local people. So when they come into, these different areas that they work, not just, Vancouver is the main city, but they actually go into these little towns where all the actual locations are, and, they do all this stuff. They bring a lot to the economy for the area, which is really, really good for that. Because I know there's another show, I think it's Sweet Magnolia. They film in a small town in Georgia. And they were saying that they have brought like millions of dollars to the economy in that town because of all the people who get jobs because of, the production when they're there for, these shows usually film for 3, 4, 5 months at a time. Yep. And then, you figure you've got catering people and you have drivers and you have makeup artists. I mean, some of the people are associated directly with the show. Right. But you've got local people that, that are providing food, like the restaurants. Think about all the restaurants that people are ordering food from, and just lodging and just everyday service. I mean, they need local drivers. There's just so much that goes into a production. And most people don't know that because it's all behind the scenes. I mean, as many people are as in front of the camera, there's probably 3 times that behind the camera. Yeah. Easily, if not more. I mean, it's probably hundreds of people that get jobs. And then you have something like this where it's supposed to be like the whole town and people from other towns, and they're all extras. they get jobs for a few days, and they've got people to set up and people to break the stuff down. And so
Yeah,
it's really, really good for the economy of the area that the shows are filmed in.
that's
It's
nice.
really nice. So all these people are extras, which is fun. And so people are getting food and they're walking around and they're having a good time. Now we see Jack. Now, Jack is a lumberjack. I mean, it's kind of perfect. The episode is called Jack and Jill because that's one of the games is Jack and Jill. And he's got a flannel shirt on, which he always has a flannel shirt on, but this
As his
time,
sister, he was born in one.
right, this time he's got suspenders and a hat and he's got a pair of gloves. Now, Muriel, who is in charge of emceeing all of the games, is dressed in her own head to toe, I don't even know, like plaid outfit, pants and a jacket and a hat to match with her gloves, and she's very dapper as a yes, she's looking lovely.
Yes, she. This is her version of bougie.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, she's a former actress who occasionally goes back to LA for a job now and again. And this is to be in the limelight, to be in the spotlight. This is her thing. Like she probably volunteered. Oh yes, I would love to MC the games.
And the thing is, she can't look like everybody else.
Oh God,
she has to.
That's
She has to. Yeah, exactly. That's
so,
why I said this is lumberjack bougie for her.
Yep, she's loving it. So, and then she's like, "Oh, Jack, honey, where is your Jill?" Because that's going to be Mel. Remember, he volunteered them for a whole bunch of stuff that she just has no idea about.
Mm-hmm.
So she's like, "Hey, Jack, honey, where's your Jill?" And he's like, "Oh, she just texted. She'll be here in a second." And he's like, "All right." So he's getting ready, and he's like, "Oh, you lost your better half?" And then the sister says to Jack, he's like, "You and Mel sure make a cute couple." They're just so funny. And he's like, "Thanks." And he's like, "If you're smart, you'd give that lady a ring." Bert, I love Bert. And he goes, and get to starting a family. It's like,
Yep.
are you not aware he's already knocked up one chick in town? Like, I think he needs a minute. And then the sister hears that, and she basically punches him to the point that he has to he gets pushed backwards. And he's like, "What? That's the fun part." It's like, she just gives him a dirty look and walks away. Bert just nods, and Jack's like, "Okay, that was awkward." He's like, "Yeah. Okay, cool." So Preacher's looking around, and he goes back to where Christopher was standing watching Bert and the sister, because now they're at the event. So they're no longer practicing in the area that he had them in before. And Christopher's not there. And there's nobody there.
And panic ensues.
Yep. And he's like, okay. I mean, I don't know how long he left him, but he's not where he's supposed to be. So we're back at where the event is going to take place, and it looks like there's 3 contestants. It's Bert and his sister, another couple, and then Mel and Jack are supposed to be another team. And what they're doing is this giant log that looks like it's about, I don't know, a foot and a half wide. And they have this giant saw on you get on either side of it, and you just basically saw back and forth in order to see who gets through it and cuts it off faster. So that's why, but okay. So she's like, "Hey, I'm sorry. Somebody twisted their ankle at the log rolling, and, she had to do her job." And he's like, "No worries. Here's some gloves." And so Muriel's like, "Okay, everybody's here. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Jack and Jill." And it's the first team to cut all the way through the log wins this lovely handmade Paul Bunyan trophy. And it's almost like, okay.
You notice what the trophies in this song look like?
They're goofy.
It's just so weird.
They're goofy. Do you really want that on your mantle? I'm gonna say no. I'm gonna be like, I'd be okay if I didn't win.
And the one with the marbles. I mean, it's just
it's just for fun. It's just for fun. I like the marble one personally. And if you, I don't
Uh,
know if you notice, it's still in her cabin. It's on the shelf. Remember when he fell asleep? I'm sorry.
yeah,
Remember when she fell asleep in the car and he had to get the flashlight?
yeah.
I think it's on that shelf. I know in later episodes it is on that blue shelf that's next to the couch.
Okay,
Um,
you've watched the show way too many times.
well, no, I notice things like that, like little things like that. I notice, like if there was, something on the counter. I'm a very observant person. I pick up little details. That's why when I watch like mysteries or movies or murders, my husband's like, "What?" Like we were watching something the other night. And I was like, I'm literally saying the dialogue before they said it. And he was like, "How did you?" I'm like, "Because it's kind of obvious." And he's like, "No, it's really not." I'm sorry. He did it. This is why. And like half an hour later, we find out. And he's like, "How did you?" I'm like, "I don't know. I pay attention. I catch things." So I should have been a detective. I think if I didn't do what I did in life, and if I could go back, I probably would be like a homicide detective or something. Because I
Yes, I
just
think
think
you would have
that's
been.
fascinating.
You would have been very good at that.
It's too late now, so now I'll just have to live vicariously through guessing
Yes,
all
long.
the ends of the TV shows before other people. I don't know. Anywho, so Mel thinks it's funny that they're gonna saw through a log, and he's like, "All right, here we go." And they're like, and they blow the horn, and everybody starts sawing like crazy, back and forth, back and forth. And he's like, "Okay, hey babe, bend your knees." She's like, "What?" He goes, "Bend your knees. Strength comes from your legs, not your arms." She's like, "Okay, like this." And he's like, "Yeah." So everybody's sawing, and they're doing pretty good. Mel and Jack seem to be doing really well. And people are yelling, "Come on, Jack, come on, Mel." And they're getting a little encouragement. Now, off to the side, we see Brie sitting at a table with Mike, having a lovely conversation. They're laughing, enjoying each other's company. I guess she got some snacks because she's got a little bag of bakery treats on the table. So they're having a good time. And he's kind of like not paying attention to what he's doing, but
He's distracted.
well, he's trying to read the room. And then he says, "Hey, did you get a chance to talk to Brie?" And Mel was like, I think she's gonna talk to you." Now she's doing this by and she's heavy breathing because she's sawing through this thing. And he's like, "I think she's avoiding me. I just want to know what's going on." He's not even breaking a sweat. Like he doesn't even look like he's working that hard.
No,
And she's like, like this is hard. And
I
she's
think it
like,
would be. It's like her running and him running, and she would be fine, and he would be
right,
out
and
of
he'd
breath.
be like dragging behind, exactly.
Mm.
And so Mel's like, "Well, she said she had a bad breakup with some attorney in Sacramento a few months ago." And he's like, "I didn't even know she had a boyfriend." And Mel's like, "Oh my gosh." She stops and she stands up and she's like breathing. She's like, "This is so hard." She's like, "I thought I was in shape until now." And he's like, "Well, you are still the hottest Jill here." It's like, and then she gives him a look and starts laughing. She goes, "Yeah, I see what you're doing." And he's like, "What?" She's like, "You think compliments are going to keep me going?" And he's like, "Yeah, I hope so." She goes, "This team requires 2 people." She's like, "Fine." And he goes, "That's my girl." And he's like, "Come on." And they keep sawing. And she's groaning. And they're about halfway through. They're doing pretty good. And he's like, "So Brie really quit her job over a boyfriend?" Because all he knew was she quit. She didn't say why. Remember in the back of the
Yeah,
bar, and they had that conversation, and he thought she was joking, and I know I really did quit. And he's like, "Really? Over a boyfriend?" And Mel's like, "You really should talk to her about it, but yes." And she said she just didn't want to see him in court. And
mm.
he's like, "It's really hard to believe that she got this twisted up over a guy." And Mel's like, "Well, maybe, she was in love with him. I don't know. She's your sister." And Jack's like, "She doesn't let anything get in the way of her career, ever." And Mel's like, "Yeah, well, for some people, when they get older, their priorities change." And he's looking at her like, "What do you mean by that?" And she's like, I just think, love is different for everyone." And she said, "Sometimes when things get serious, people want to pull back." And Jack's like, "Why do I feel that that's aimed at me?" And they start slowing down with their sawing. And she's like, "It wasn't. He goes, well, I can get close to people. I mean, look at us.
Mm.
And they're like not even sawing at this point. And she's like,
Nope.
yeah, but, and he's like, well, and he's like, what? And he's like, what? She's like, I just think the idea of a relationship changing your life kind of freaks you out. They're literally not even sawing. They're just standing there having a conversation. And he gives her a look like, what?
Mm-hmm.
And everybody's cheering. The bell rings, and Bert and his sister win. Now, if they would have kept going, they were actually ahead of everybody else. But because they're having a conversation in the middle of trying to do this.
Yes.
So Muriel's in the background. This year's Jack and Jill are siblings, Molly and Bert Gordon. Everybody cheers. And Mel's like, oh, okay. Well, this didn't go as planned. So they get this ugly trophy, and that's exciting for them. And they're like, good job. Yay. Congratulations. And Jack's like, I don't think the Lumberjack Games is a place to have this conversation. And Mel's like, I wasn't trying to. And then Preacher walks up. Fortunately, it's like saved by the drama. Hey, guys, have you seen Christopher? I can't find him. And they're like, no. And it's like, well, he was. Bert was like, he was over where, you know, we were practicing. He said he was waiting for you when we left. And he's like, yeah, he's not there. And Mel and Jack are like, okay, let's go find him. So they're on a mission. So we have Joellen. And Joellen has found Doc, and she's like, Doc, you're going to be late. And he goes, no, the canoe race, it's all good, and the vest, and, you know, and she's like, no, I'm talking about the trap shooting competition. And he's like, oh, I told Hope I'm not shooting this year. And she's like, but you're on the list. And he goes, well, you can just scratch me off. No big deal. It's fine. She goes, including you, there's only 3 people signed up, so if you don't participate, it's hardly an event. And he's like, well, I don't think anyone's going to care if I shoot or not. And she's like, she started to like look both ways, like look around, and she gets very, very sad. And he's like, Joellen, what's wrong? He goes, I was just with Lily and the girls, and I can't believe she has cancer. Like, now everybody knows. And he's like, he's trying to console her, and he's rubbing her shoulder, and he's like, I know, she goes, what am I supposed to do? Like, she just doesn't even know. She's like, can't even wrap my head around it. You know, do we sit around and wait? Do we do something until she, you know, what do we do? And he's like, when it comes to the end, none of us really know what's going to happen. So all we can do is just live our lives. And she goes, even though it's all going to disappear? And he's like, look at it this way. If you spend all your time focusing on the end, then you're going to miss the show. And so she really, really needed to hear that. And so she gives him a big hug, and she thanks him, and she's like, I needed to hear that. And he's like, you know what? I did too. Because he needed to say it. You know, they kind of both needed it. So now we go over to the log rolling, and Ricky has decided to participate. Unfortunately, he doesn't last long, and he ends up in the water. But, you know, he's going to go and try again. And Preacher runs up to him as he's climbing himself out of the water, and he's like, hey, have you seen Christopher? And he's like, you mean recently? And he's like, yeah. And he's like, no. And so he keeps going. And Ricky gets back on the log. One more try. Now, Doc, I guess, has decided to participate in the skeet shooting. Even though he doesn't want to, he's going to do it
part
anyway.
of it is because of his eyesight. It's
right, but nobody knows that. Remember, this is a big secret. So, and they're like, he does this every year. So Muriel comes up, and she's, you know, because she's the MC of every event. And so she's like, oh, I'm so glad you're here. And she's, you know, I've had a number of people tell me that my enthusiasm is inspiring. You know, everything is so dramatic with her. And he's like, oh, I've heard you were great. And she's like, oh, I'm excited to watch you defend your title. So clearly he's really good at this. And I don't know. I get the feeling he wins like every year. And he's like, well, I don't think he's already setting the bar really low, because he already feels like he's got a problem. And he doesn't want anybody to assume that he's going to win again. So if he sets the bar really low, then the expectations aren't there. So he's like, well, I don't think this is going to be my year. And she's like, oh, you're just being modest. No one shoots like you. And he's, oh, you're too kind. Look at the time. I'm going to be late to check in. So she's like, break a leg, or in this case, break a disc. Whatever. He's like, shouldn't know what to say. He's like, yeah, let's hope so. So he's very uncomfortable.
Apprehend.
Now,
Mm-hmm.
a gentleman walks up to him and shakes his hand, and he's like, Alex, I didn't expect to see you here. He goes, oh, my kids wanted to come. This is his doctor. And
Wow.
Doc is like, oh, his name's Alex. Alex says, I spend a small fortune on Klondike bars. And he goes, well, it is for a good cause. And he goes, which is why we'll be back next year. And the doctor's like, I'm really glad to see that your AMD, his macular degeneration, hasn't slowed him down. And Doc is like, well, actually, there's a mix-up, and I didn't really have a choice. I wasn't supposed to compete. And he's like, I didn't really have much of a choice, but my chances of hitting anything are maybe 10%. And so the doctor's like, have you given any more thought to the anti-whatever VEGF therapy is? It must be some, one of the options that he has that could slow down the progression of it. It doesn't cure it and it doesn't make it go away, but it slows down the progression so that he'll have his eyesight longer. Then Nick comes over and he's like, okay, Doc, you're up. So the doctor's like, we'll talk later. So Doc is very nervous. And Nick is like, we better hurry it up because Joellen's a stickler for the schedule and we better not get behind or she's going to have a conniption. So Doc gets his little, his gun ready. He's just looking very apprehensive. Like, he really doesn't want to do this. And I think he's just hoping for the best. Now, at the same time, a bunch of people are looking for Christopher. We've got Jack. He's like, have you seen Christopher? He sees Brie and he asks her. And she's like, can you keep an eye out? We can't find him. And she's like, hey, Jack. And he's like, yeah. She's like, sorry about last night. I'm just dealing with some stuff. And he's like, I just want to help you. And she's like, yeah, I know, but I don't need help. And he's like, why are you pushing me away? And she's like, I'm not. He's like, then talk to me. And he's like, come on, whatever it is, I can handle it. And she's like, it's personal. And he's like, so what? And she's like, before the shooting, when's the last time you called? He's like, what? So you're keeping me in the dark about your life because I didn't call you enough? She goes, no, but ever since you got back from Iraq, you've been emotionally and physically MIA. Not just with me, but with the entire family. He's like, come on, I love you. She goes, yeah, I love you too. But sometimes it feels like we're strangers. And then Mel rolls up, and she's like, hey. And Brie's like, hi. It's kind of awkward. And she's like, any luck? And they're like, no, I was going to check the parking lot. And Mel's like, I'm going to go check where the horses are. And then Brie's like, she notices something's a little off with the two of them. She goes, feel free to tell me it's none of my business. Because clearly we all just get into each other's business. She goes, but is there something going on with you guys? And Jack's like, honestly, I don't know. I mean, she's like, what do you mean? He's like, she said something about me getting spooked, like when a relationship turned serious or something. And I don't know where that's coming from. And Brie takes a deep breath and she's like, her inner voice is like, crap.
No.
She's like, yeah, I think I might. And he's like, what's going on? So now we have a scenery shot and we hear Muriel yell, pull. And it's Doc. It's his competition. So this woman went. She missed, unfortunately. Don't think she's going to be the winner this year. So it's Doc's turn. And Muriel is right there. And the doctor is there. And Nick is there. And everybody's there, like, supporting Doc. And he's just taking a deep breath. And he rubs his eyes. He's hoping for the best. He aims. He yells, pull. He shoots. And he misses it. Okay, number 2 shot. Pull. Nails it. Everybody claps. Good job. And we do a 3rd shot. Takes a deep breath. Pull. Nails it again. So he got 2 out of 3. Which I think... So 4. Oh, and then there's a 4th one, and he gets that one. So now he's got 3 out of 4. So he's done really well. Probably way better. I think he thought he might have gotten one of them. But everybody's cheering for him, and Nick walks up, and he goes, Doc still has it, and he wins. He gives him the little, I don't know, little plaque or whatever you get for winning.
Black.
Yep. So the games are still going on. There's people climbing trees and there's people doing rolling. And then Ricky is just standing there chatting with somebody, and this Sergeant Gomez that he met before walks up to him. And he's like, "How are you doing?" And he goes, "PFT training going all right?" And he goes, he's down to a 7-minute race. So that means that he's doing some kind of training on the sly. Like, nobody knows what he's really doing. I mean, I think Jack and Preacher might, but I don't know how much they know. And Ricky's like, "I need to get my score up." And so he's clearly got things that he needs to do so that he's ready when it comes time to go to basic training. And he's very confident. Now, while this Sergeant Gomez is chatting with Ricky, we see Lizzie sort of off to the side watching. Like, what? What is he doing? Now, the guy's also giving him a few pointers about the test because they have to take a test. And he's telling him that he should concentrate on the mathematical part of the exam because maybe that would be beneficial to him. And he's asking him about his cardio and all of that. So Lizzie's very suspicious. Why is he talking to that guy? Now, at the same time, Preacher's running around still looking for Christopher. And he runs into Mel and is like, "Have you seen him? Is there any sign of him?" And nobody can find him. And then just as Preacher gets his phone out to say, "I'm going to call Mike and the sheriff," Mel spots Christopher and points him out to Preacher. Finally, they find him. So Mel's like, "I'm going to let everybody know that we found him and you can go deal with him." She's like, "I've done my job." Right? She's like, "Yeah, I'm done." So he runs over to where Christopher is and he's like, "Hey, where have you been? What are you doing?" And he's like, "Eating turkey." And he's got this monstrous turkey leg in his hand, just munching away like he's not got a care in the world.
It reminds me of the Renaissance fairs.
Exactly. That's exactly what I was just going to say. He goes, "I thought I told you to stay put." And he just shrugs his shoulders like, "Yeah, whatever. Whatever, dude." Remember his advice? "Whatever, dude." And he's like, "Listen, I know you're angry and you're frustrated with me, but that doesn't make it okay for you to ignore what I say." Like, this is his first scolding. I don't think he's been scolded by Preacher yet. He goes,
Nope.
Do you understand that I am responsible for you? And if anything were to happen to you, I'd never forgive myself. Like, I think he thought maybe he just really doesn't care. Because he's making him do all this stuff and making him go here and making him go there, you know, and he still misses his mom. And yeah, Connie's there too, but it's like, it's a weird situation for him. He's kind of thrown into it. I mean, he didn't know Preacher all that well, and now Preacher's like in charge of him.
Yep.
And so he's like, "Why not?" And he's like, "Because I promised to take care of you." And he goes, "I can't do this unless you help me." So Preacher's like, "It's okay. I get it. Just don't do it again. Like, I think we should shake on it. Because when you shake, you make a deal." So they have their, like, cool handshake. So now they're okay. Because he really cares about him. It's just,
He does.
the kid's just going through a lot.
When your mother disappears all of a sudden, it's hard.
Okay, so now it's the treetop games. Now, Mel doesn't like heights and didn't understand what this was. And they're kind of in a little bit of a tiff right now. So this could be awkward. Ricky, I think he's partners with Jeb. There's other people that are also doing this. So it looks like it's these wires that are suspended between the trees, and there's different ways to get from each tree. Some of them you have to climb, some you have to slide, some you have to, catwalk over there. So there's a lot of different ways to get through the course, and the first one that gets through it and hits all the points wins. That's kind of the basics of it. And Mel is like, "I don't even know." So it's Mike and Ricky, Mel and Jack. We've got some other random people. Jeb is with probably one of the other guys from the town. We've got all the spectators. Ricky's trying to be nice and wave to Lizzie, and she's just not having it.
She's got the sourpuss face
Oh,
on.
yeah. She definitely, he's like, oh, okay, I'm not going to wave to you then because you're not going to wave back. And everybody's watching. It's very high up. I mean, it's like, I don't know, 10 stories high in the air. And so Mel's like, okay, tell me again how this is a lumberjack thing. And he explains loggers sometimes use harnesses when they fell branches, which I guess that means they trim the branches or cut them down or whatever. She's just like, I don't really want to do this. Like the look on her face is like, why are you making me do this?
Because he loves
Yeah.
you.
I just want to be together. She's probably like, yeah, I could be sitting um in my house, in my cabin,
That
drinking
night
wine.
well, in front of that cozy fire,
Right?
drinking
I
coffee
could
or
think
hot
of
chocolate.
10 other things we could be doing, and this would not be in the top 9. So,
Tell me about it.
right? And she's like, ugh, just my luck. And he's just making sure she's all strapped in and helmet on. And he's like, do you want to do this or not? Like, he kind of gets a little snippy with her. And she's like, yeah, I love the idea of hanging from a tree like a howler monkey. And she smiles. And he goes, is that a yes or no? She goes, it's a yes, yes, yes. Fine. Sounded like a no. She goes, no, it's a yes. He goes, are you ready? She's like, yeah. So here's Muriel, because she's the MC, and she's like, okay, listen up, everyone. Treetop race is about to start. We have multiple teams and heats in different locations. So go find your favorite team and cheer them on. And she's got that bullhorn. Oh my gosh. She goes, whatever team finishes the course with the fastest time wins. And then she's funny.
She is something else.
Well, and then Charlie, who, I don't know.
Charlie.
He's like, Muriel, that megaphone looks mighty good on you. What? And she's like, oh, Charles, thank you. Whatever. She's like, okay.
That's back mountain flirting, girl.
I guess. So she does the countdown, and they start. So Jack runs across the first one, and Mel follows. And what they have to do in order to get around to the other side is they have to unclip and reclip to go around the tree. Like, Mel is, like, just a lot slower because she's never done this before. People are shouting, and Lizzie looks like she's got a clipboard, like she's sort of in charge of time. So Mike is taking his time through it, and Jeb is going, and everyone is doing the best that they can, slow and steady, trying to make it across these very high up and dangerous ways. Oh my gosh. Jack makes it across, then Mel. They're moving pretty good. They're doing okay. So he's like, listen. And she's like, what? He goes, there's something I need to tell you. And Jack's like, are you afraid of heights? She's like, I'm being serious. Okay, what? He goes, what you said back at the Jack and Jill games, that's not fair. And he's like, remember, I was the one who wanted this relationship. And you were protecting yourself. And she's like, yeah, I know. But I made the leap, and now you're the one protecting yourself. In the middle of the game, now keep in mind, this is a timed event. And they've decided after their second tree that they're going to stop and have a conversation. And she's like, but I made the leap, and now you're the one protecting yourself. And he's like, are you talking about having babies? I need time to think things through. It's only been a couple of days. And she's like, well, yeah, and the horn blares. People are cheering. So I guess they blow the horn every little bit to kind of, like, each time people finish a certain section. It's just to keep them going. So he's reclipping and unclipping, and he's kind of trying to move them along, even though they've kind of stopped in the middle to have conversation about the relationship. Like, this is not the time or the place. So Mel starts to go through, and he's like, I know it's only been a few days. And she comes back with, I just thought that we'd have another conversation about it by now. And he's like, I'm sorry. I don't have an answer for you. Now, while they're talking, they're scaling this thing. It's like walking on a tightrope by holding another tightrope above your head, which seems like a really difficult thing to do. Like, they should be, don't you think they should be concentrating in the middle of this conversation? Like, you should be focusing on not falling at this point. But, you know, they're going to discuss the relationship.
Well, you know, relationships are like tight wires. Sometimes.
I guess this is a metaphor for how things are going right now.
Exactly.
Precarious. Very precarious.
To say the least.
Mel's like, I'm not asking for an answer. She's like, I just want communication. And he's like, well, it feels like you want an answer as soon as possible. And they're like struggling to get across this thing. And the last thing she needs to do is like turn around and have the conversation. Like she needs to focus on moving forward to get across this thing.
But it's so like a woman to want to stop in the middle of whatever she's doing.
And she's like, what does that mean? And he's like, well, if I say no, it's not too late for plan B. And she's like, excuse me. And she gets pissed. She's like, there is no plan B. And then she falls off. And everybody in the bottom, like down on the ground, is like, oh, gasping. Like, oh my God, Mel fell off. And she's just hanging there. And he's like, you okay? She goes, yeah, I'm fabulous. And he's like, thanks. She's like, you're welcome. Like they're just, this is not good.
No,
and he's kind of laughing at her, like, okay, you fell, and you're kind of cute though. You know, it's like he has that look on his face, and he's like, here, give me your hand, and she's like, ugh, and she goes to grab his hand, and she yanks him until he falls off, like yanks him hard, and then the two of them are dangling, and everybody's like, oh my God, they fell, and now they're all like giggling and laughing, and he goes, oh, I suppose you're happy now. She goes, yeah, that was pretty funny. And he's like, yeah, it makes you laugh, yeah. And they're laughing, giggling, and he's pushing at her, and she's like, let me help you. And she's like, stop, no. He's like, come on, I'm trying to help you. And he's like, come on, I want to help you. And she's like, make me. And the race is over, the horn blows, and the two of them are just laughing at each other, and she goes, I think we lost again. I mean, their legs are all tangled together and whatever. And he's like, there's always next year. And she's like, I am not doing this next year. And he's like, why? He's like, oh, you're cute as a lumberjack. And they're just giggling and laughing. And he grabs her face and he kisses her. It's really cute. And everybody cheers. They think they're adorable. Because they're all tangled up together, just hanging there. Losers.
And they are adorable.
They're losers.
But adorable losers.
Yeah, they're adorable. So we're at the top of the mountain. It must be like one of those view clearings, sort of like on your way from one part of the games to another part of the games. And there's a bench up there, and Bree's just kind of sitting there, just enjoying the scenery. You know.
Yep, she needs a little space from prying brothers.
Well, you know, everybody's asking a lot of questions. Between Mel and Jack, there's a lot of questions.
Yep.
And so she goes up there to sit, and Brady comes walking up, and he goes, what are you doing all the way up here? Hiding out? And he's like, no, I just had a thing with Jack, and I needed some space. And he goes, you want me to leave you alone? But he doesn't sit down. He sits, like, right next to her. Like, there's not much space between them. And she's like, no, it's fine. And they kind of, like, nudge each other. And he's like, you know, it's just sibling stuff. And he's like, yeah, well, I saw you talking to Mike. And Bree's like, jealous? He's like, what? No. She's like, I'm kidding. They kind of laugh about it. He goes, anyway, I was thinking about taking the bike out. You want to go for a ride? And she's like, where? He's like, well, there's this cool little Italian joint in Grace Valley. And she's like, isn't that like 2 hours away? And he's like, mm-hmm. He said, why? You got somewhere else you want to be? And she's like, not that I can think of. He's like, good. And he takes her hand, and he's like, come on. So off they go. We won't see them for the rest of the night.
Definitely not. Because we know how to spend our time.
Oh, yeah. So now everything is winding down. They're starting to put things away and clean up. And, you know, it's coming to the end of the day. And up walks Charmaine. She's got Tucker the dog. And she's like, did you win? Because, you know, they've dated for 2 years. And so she's been around the Lumberjack Games, whether, you know, what she knows much about, I don't know. But she's like, did you win? And he's like, no, not this year. And she's like, uh-huh. She's just looking around. She goes, and he's like, where's Todd? She's like, oh, he's having some beer with some guys from the club. So and she's like, here's Tucker. And then she kind of very sadly, like she's very kind of heartbroken about giving up Tucker. She's like, in the mornings, he likes to have his tummy rubbed before breakfast. And he gets 3 walks a day, and he prefers to nap in the sunlight. So, and she's starting to get like teary. She goes, here's his food and his toys and his blankie. And Jack is like, you really don't have to do this. And she's like, yeah, I do actually. She's like, Todd's not allergic. He's just not a dog person. I thought I could change his mind, but obviously I couldn't, so here we are. And Jack is like, so he's just making you get rid of your dog? She's like, he's not making me. It's a sacrifice, Jack. Pretty crappy sacrifice, if you ask me. She's like, yeah, well, I wasn't asking you. She's like, so are you going to take Tucker or not? And he's like, yes. So
Now,
she
what's
has
Jack supposed to do with a dog now?
exactly. So she hands him over. He's like, okay, I have to go. And he's like, it'll be okay. It'll be okay, Shar. And he's like, oh boy. And turns around holding the dog. And Mel walks up and it's like, how do you feel about dogs? And she's like, why are you asking me that? He's like, Todd doesn't want to keep Tucker. And she's like, what? He's like, yeah. He goes, oh, that must have broken her heart to give him up. And she goes, I think she should give Todd away. That's what Jack says. But that's just my opinion. And she's like, and you are entitled to it. Oh, my. So he puts Tucker down and he attaches him to the table so that he can
not run off with all these
not
people
run
running
off.
around.
Yeah. And so Mel's like, look, I'm sorry that we ended up talking about our relationship like in the middle of the sporting event. He was not how I wanted the day to go. He goes, yeah, me neither. I'm sorry too. And they're kind of just like, ugh. And then he says, Brie said she told you about Mandy. Now, you know, she's been thinking about this since Brie said something.
Yep.
And you know that that's what's been hanging on her. Like, that's what's bugging her. It has nothing to do with all the other stuff. That's the part that's irritating her. And she's like, oh, yeah, that. With, like, this awkward smile. She's like, I told her I wouldn't say anything and, you know, figured that you would end up telling me someday. He goes, well, there's really not much to tell. I mean, we got married right out of high school. I joined the Marines. She filed for divorce when I shipped out to Iraq. The whole marriage lasted less than 3 months. And she's like, but why didn't you just tell me before? And he's like, it's not really something I ever think about. I mean, you figure he was what, 18? And this is like almost 30 years ago.
Yeah.
25, 30 years ago. And he's like, I'm sorry you found out the way you did. And she's like, yeah, makes me wonder what else I don't know about. And he's like what? She's like, I don't know. I just want to be prepared for the future. He's like, yeah, I get it. But you told me to take some time to think about the baby. So she goes, yeah, I know. I'm sorry. I didn't think it was going to be this hard to wait. He's like, wherever we end up, we're going to be together. She's like, and I want you to be happy. She's like, I want to be happy. I want you to be happy, but I want a family. He goes, well, what about the twins? Okay. Dude, really? Like, you know this woman, her uterus hurts so bad she wants to have a baby. And what she went through. And your answer is, yeah, my ex-girlfriend, baby mama, is going to have twins and you can be a part-time mother to my ex's babies? Like,
welcome
Jack?
to a man thinking.
Jack. Dude.
That's how some men think.
Like, you should have thought about that before it came out your mouth.
Nope.
He's like, you know, if we got married, you'd be their stepmother. Because, you know, that's what she wants in life. She wants to be the stepmother to a set of twins of his ex. Who tried very, very hard to break them up.
Yep.
Serious.
That's typical of man to think this way.
And we know Mel. She's like, I know. I would love them with all my heart. Part-time. Hello. Because they're only going to be with them part-time. She's like, but I know myself and loving them is not going to stop the feeling that I have to have a baby of my own. Like, before he even said that, he should have known that that's what she was going to say. I mean, come on.
Well, as you know, sometimes he can be...
Sometimes he's a little, like, what's the word? Emotionally immature. Because he just doesn't have a lot of experience.
But also the fact is he doesn't always connect the dots.
No, he doesn't.
You know, he doesn't connect the dots. There are things that come out of his mouth, and you go,
You're like,
dude.
what, Jack? Really? Like, really?
And so that, ladies and gentlemen, is the problem right there.
Yeah, 100%.
Mm-hmm.
So
So,
she's like, I just want you to think about it. He's like, yeah, I mean, I know, and I will, I am. Like, he's trying to convince her that this is, he's thinking. Like, he's got a lot to think about. He's a lot on his plate, and he's already feeling overwhelmed. Just like he said to Mike, he's like, it makes his chest hurt thinking about
yeah.
having 3 kids when he didn't even really plan on 2 or
In
1 for
plot
that matter.
one.
Right?
Yep.
And she's like, okay. And he's like, hey, I love you. And she's like, I love you too. And a nice big hug. And then the cell phone rings because, God, they just never get a break. Mel's phone rings. And he's like, can you tell them you'll call them back? And she's like, no, I'm still on the clock. Sorry.
So they both have to attend to their phone.
She has to answer. And he's going to go back to cleaning up. And she's like, hello. And she's like, okay, I'll be right there. And he's like, what? What's the emergency? And she goes, there's an emergency at Lily's. And of course, Jack, who apparently Mel is not allowed to drive herself anywhere because he's like, I'll drive you. Let's go. Like, anytime she needs to go somewhere, she has a personal chauffeur.
Mm-hmm.
He's so chivalrous, this man. So chivalrous. And we end there.
Yes, we do.
Which is, I mean, it's a cliffhanger.
It's not a cliffhanger.
But not really.
Not really.
I mean, it's a, oh, what's going on? I wouldn't call that a cliffhanger.
No, that's not a cliffhanger.
No, I think, yeah. Well, it could be anything. It could be something with Chloe. It could be a problem with Lily. There's a lot of things that could happen. So,
yeah.
I guess we'll just have
folks,
to wait and see.
We'll have to wait till next episode. It was lovely as usual.
Yes, thank you so much for sharing your time with us and listening to our shenanigans as our banter goes back and forth.
Yes. And have a good one.
Yes, and we will be back for another fun-filled episode of Virgin River next time. Thanks. Bye-bye.